So, 1969. So I was coming of age. I was a sophomore in college in 1969 when this photo was taken. And when this photo was taken, there were 3.6 billion human beings on this magnificent planet. We sit here now, and there's double that number, roughly 7.3 billion people. Now, Earth, as we all know, hasn't doubled. It's still the same precious, beautiful blue orb in space that it was back in 1969. And I begin this way because this was my coming of age. As a sophomore in college, this is what we talked about, the population problem. What are we going to do? We're growing at 2% a year. At 2%, we double every 35 or 40 years. Let's fast forward to today. This is not an ideal slide. It's like, huh? I want to walk you through it. First of all, notice the bottom, the words Anthropocene. So we know these different, the Pleistocene, right? These different past epochs. We're now living, or at least we thought we were living, in something called the Holocene. So if you go back about 11,000 years in time, as we construct climate, an event happened. The Earth's orbit tilted or shifted slightly, and that shifted us out of the ice ages 11,000 years ago. They ended, and shifted us into this very stable period that we've been in for the last roughly 10,000 years, ever since the agricultural revolution. And so when that happened, geologists said, okay, that was a major event that shifted the way the Earth functioned. And so they named it the Holocene, the recent period. Well, now geologists are saying, you know what, the Holocene, this period that we've been in for the last 11,000 years, is over. They've actually announced that we're now in a new geologic epoch. And it's being called the Anthropocene. Anthro from anthropology, anthro from human. And they're even, they're having, as academics sort of do, when did it start? But most opinion converges around, it was sometime in the early 50s. And it was at that time that so these are graphs, right? And we can see that on the left, or perhaps just trust me, the red things are socioeconomic indicators. So world population up here, GDP, and so forth and so on. And on the right are Earth system indicators. So terrestrial biosphere degradation, tropical forest loss, marine fish capture, shrimp aquaculture. And the names aren't so important. What I want to call your attention to is that in all these cases, as we track what's happening in the social as well as the biological, ecological realm, we see relatively small change until we get to about 1950, 1940, 1960, at which point everything begins to take off in an exponential fashion. And that's why this particular graph is dubbed the Great Acceleration. What's happening is that for the first time in the history of the Earth, one species, us, has actually created so much change that it has actually changed the nature of this planet. It's changed the climate. So the Great Acceleration. On the one hand, I'm just thinking here, wow, we really do rock. I mean, we could do that. We could actually, little old us could create a new geologic period. And, none of us asked, none of you all, especially speaking to those of you who are, younger than 40, none of you asked to be born at this particular life moment. I was listening to a talk yesterday where the speaker said that if you're younger than 40, and here was the reference, that in the last 40 years, half of all the CO2 emissions that have been part of this great acceleration in terms of atmospheric change, half of them, all the anthropocentric CO2 emissions, have happened in the last 40 years. And the other half happened that is the human-caused ones, happened in the 250 years prior to that. But just in the last 40 years, there's been this unbelievable shift, this unbelievable change. And so when we look back upon the last those of us who are, older than 40, if I had been asked a short time ago, so what was the defining moment of the 20th century? I would say, well, probably the two world wars, or maybe the Depression, or perhaps the Cold War. But with a little bit of a historical perspective, I think it's pretty clear that no, it has been this shift from gradual, you might say incremental growth, 1, 2, 3, 4, to exponential, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. So what do we do with that? So it's pretty obvious here. We're just looking at two together. The blue is population, billions of people. And again, showing this exponential nature, things going on slowly and then boom. And of course, that's been facilitated and abetted by an equally precipitous growth in oil consumption, not to mention other fossil fuels. So the great acceleration. So sort of a flippant response to the question, so what is climate change? What's it going on? And one way of thinking about that is it's simply Earth's response to our unbridled consumption. So I take you back to those exponential growth curves. I mean, pick anything. Pick magic markers. Pick pencils. Pick toasters. Pick microwave ovens. Everything that we seek and want and believe brings us comfort has that quality to it. And you can't just do one thing, right? That's a basic ecological tenet. So this is Earth's response. That is climate change. Really is the Earth's atmosphere saying, hey, we can only process so much waste, folks. We can't do more. I spent a couple years in Japan as a young man, and I spent a lot of time learning these kanji, the alphabet there is 1,800 characters. And oftentimes the characters are cognates. They're put together to create new words. So the two characters, the one for danger on the left and the one for opportunity on the right, are put together to make a new word, and that word is crisis. So I want to invite you to considering this particular moment, this axial moment, you might say, in human history, that we often dub as a crisis, can also be seen as perhaps an opportunity. How we see things, the stories we create, really make a difference. Next. So from a sort of academic perspective, well, not even that, from sort of human evolution perspective, it's an opportunity to expand our temporal consciousness. As a species, if you think about our history, our 200,000-year history as you and me, as Homo sapiens, right? Mostly, our time horizon was pretty short. We were concerned about something that might happen tomorrow or next week, not even having those terms. But all of a sudden, we now have the scientific tools that allow us to look at the environment, climate, over huge periods of time. So on the horizontal axis, we're going from 400,000 years ago, almost 500,000 years ago, to the present. And we're tracking using ice cores, that is air trapped in ice that we can date. We're tracking CO2 concentrations over time. So it kind of brings up the idea that, gosh, could we actually be endangered species? We're really good at naming the different endangered species. And sometimes when you're the fish in the water, you have a difficult time seeing your own situation and who you are. So I want you to take in these pictures. Just take them in. Don't look away. And, these are 9. I could put up 100. I could put up 1,000. I could put up 10,000. These are images of this precious, precious planet. And I show them for a reason. And I say don't look away for a reason. And the reason is that, it's our capacity to feel, to not look away, to not go onto Facebook, to not get distracted. It's our capacity to feel. This is an evolutionary gift It's our feelings that move us. It's our emotions that move us. So hold that. So there's another opportunity, and that is to ask ourselves uncomfortable questions. And one is, how is it that we're able to do this? It's not too strong a word to say that we're actually abusing our home. You abuse something that you don't care about, that you have very low regard for, that you don't appreciate, that you don't love. The father who abuses his child is separated from that child. The company that abuses the forest, that clear cuts, has lost connection to earth. Right? The country that wages war in a foreign land, killing civilians, has lost connection to the sacredness of human life. I want to invite you to explore what I call the separation hypothesis. And there's 3 pieces to it. The gist of it, just to kind of let you know where this is going, is that the mess that if we really look, that we see out there, the state of the world that we see, is a reflection of the inner state of our own beings, both individually and collectively. I mean, this is elementary psychology. What we've created out there is a projection of what is happening in us, in our hearts, in our bodies. That there's a one-to-one match. So let me take that apart, if you'll allow that. It begins, I think, with a separation from our feelings. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, and it seems to be the case today, that as children, both in the home and certainly in schooling, if we're feeling bubbly, the message is, calm down. Don't get so excited. If we're feeling sad, it's like, cheer up. Don't feel sad. Come on, that's a bummer. If we're feeling angry, get yourself under control. If we're feeling depressed, take a pill. Right? In other words, don't feel. Don't feel. Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese teacher, has written, to heal the world, the first thing we need to do is to hear within ourselves the sounds of earth crying. We read something about climate change, and we watch a documentary, we get kind of worked up about that, And he's suggesting, okay, slow down and allow yourself to really hear it, to feel it, to be it. Just to feel the sadness of it. Or to feel anger, or to feel the emptiness of it. So gosh, okay, I know it's happening, but there's nothing I can do. To feel that sense of powerlessness. To trust that those feelings take us somewhere. They open us. Maybe they open us to a conversation, and you say, yeah, I'm feeling that way too. And all of a sudden, we break our silences, We come out. We come out as human beings. So 1, again, separation from our feelings, from the life force that moves us. 2nd, and very much related, we separate our heads from our bodies. It's almost as if, my head is up here and it sort of directs, it kind of directs. The rest tells me when to feed, tells me how to groom, right? But we're living up here. Joanna Macy calls it, heads on a stick. It's like a lollipop, right? And what matters in the lollipop is the pop. And this thing here just holds it up so we can lick it. So I call this headism. And, it's the cultural milieu that we've been born into. Who is it? René Descartes. Said, I think, therefore I am. So this is the Enlightenment philosopher from France. I think, therefore I am. And it very much reflects the way we live our lives, the way science acts. He didn't say, I feel, therefore I am, or I love, therefore I am. He said, I think, therefore I am. Sort of a defining philosophical moment in our understandings of ourselves. So it says at the top there, headism, relate to the world through control and conquest. So if we live in our heads, the way we understand life is it's a problem to be solved and to be fixed and to be controlled. So let's look at some of the language. So doctors wage war against, I mean, this is right? Of course they wage war against cancer. Keep going. Couples fight for child custody. Companies mount campaigns for a larger share of the market. Farmers launch attacks on crop pests. Citizens struggle for their rights. Communities combat crime. Economists seek to subdue inflation. Nations battle against each other for resources. And now we fight climate change. But I want to suggest that this is the result of the way we've been conditioned. It's a story that if there's something out there, and of course it's never out there, there's never any separation, that the way we deal with it is we fight it. That makes us feel purposeful and good. And the way we fight it, especially if we're in science, and as Louise said, I was a total devotee of science, the power of science, the power of information. If people just had information, if I just had information, I would know what to do. And frankly, I don't believe that anymore. Information is important, but information alone, as we've seen, is nowhere near enough. And I was pleased to see recently in Scientific American this piece, Think Twice, How the Gut's Second Brain Influences Mood and Well-Being. So what's been discovered in the 1980s by neurophysiologists is that we actually have a second brain, and it's in our gut. Think about your pelvis, the pelvic cradle there. So there's a gut, a diffuse, complex neural network in our gut. So we have this gut brain in our pelvic cradle, and we have a head brain in this cradle in our skull. That we have two brains. Now, many of us, we didn't need science to tell us this. I mean, the Chinese, if you know anything about Chinese medicine, they refer to the belly as the palace of the mind. And the Japanese, they have this word hara. Now, we translate hara to simply belly, but for the Japanese, hara is the seat of consciousness. It's the seat of truth. Because that's how humans throughout time and space have often experienced where their true intelligence resides, in this enteric or brain belly. So beyond headism, scientists refer to this as the belly brain as the enteric brain. So again, the head brain is about control. The belly brain is about relationship. It's about harmony. I mean, you can do this. You can walk across the campus here, and you're walking, and your awareness, right, is in your head. It's just where we mostly reside. And then you can bring your attention, your awareness to your belly. I don't mean think about your belly. I mean literally presence your belly. And as you walk and do that, your experience of walking across campus will be and it takes some practice, but it will be very different. Because this enteric brain, what it does is it attunes us to the world. It attunes us we're not lost up here in our head. And it's these two opposites, the control in the head, right, and the harmony in the belly, that bring us into equilibrium as bona fide, generative, nurturing human beings, that we need both. And when I say, I don't want you to misunderstand me. When I talk about the belly, it's not like, now we often say, well, you have to listen to your body. That's not it. That's as if, okay, the brain says listen to your body. So here's the brain, and here's a wall, and here's the body, and the brain is listening to the body. No, it's not that. It's literally dropping down into our bodies, inhabiting our bodies. And when we do this, we access our full intelligence. We're not brains on a stick, trying to control, trying to wage war. There's this word scientism. You know, it could be like racism or sexism. It's this like science as almost like not just a philosophy or a way of knowing, but as truth itself. And I remember a moment when I was working in Venezuela in the rainforest. And as Luis said, I was trying to figure out nutrient cycling. And I was doing a lot of what scientists call destructive sampling. In other words, we have to, in order to figure things out, we've got to cut down these trees. We have to digest all the wood, digest the leaves, the buds, and so forth, determine the nutrient content, and on to figure out how this forest works. And again, you know, sort of in the heat of discovery and doing science, I never gave it a second thought. Just boom, I was up in my head. We're going to cut it. We're going to digest it. We're going to figure it out. And it was only in my late 40s that at one point I was teaching a class, and I wanted to show my students something, so I pulled this leaf off a tree. And I'd pulled millions of leaves off of trees for my scientific endeavors. But in that moment, something happened. You know, maybe just by happenstance, I happened to be a little bit more embodied. And I felt a certain kind of way about that. And then so here I am studying nutrient cycling. Then I realized, wow, in this moment, as I do this, I'm breathing. And my carbon dioxide is literally being taken up by the leaves in this forest. I mean, literally, it's the food stuff for those leaves. And meanwhile, my every breath is being supplied to me by the oxygen, the byproduct of photosynthesis coming from those trees. And it was almost like a holy communion, if you will, this commingling of breath, this intricacy of the cycles of life. So the third piece, remember, separate from our body's intelligence, separate from our emotions. And, you know, if we're separate from those two things, how could we not be separate in some measure from, you know, who we are, why we're here? So this is the third piece. Next. I had the pleasure of talking to some of you, those who are taking classes here, and hearing the stories of, you know, I'm a mom, I'm a dad, you know, I'm working 10 hours a day, and I'm doing this, right? And so I honor that and I respect that. And I also ask the question of myself, you know, is this really it? Is this why we're here? Is this our highest vision for ourselves? This? The job, the work, the debt, the retirement, the stress, the bills, the payments, the fear, the headache. No wonder the headache. The 5 cups of coffee a day. Is this really what it means to be human? And I suggest that, obviously, no. That we're living in a story. We didn't create it, but we adopted it. We've been socialized into it. That suggests that that's why we're here. That's our purpose. Work hard, get ahead. So being human today, you know, think about that, the age of acceleration, right? All those graphs. More is better, faster is better, doing is better than being. Keeping busy means I exist, I'm important. It's not okay to rest unless I've earned it. So if I ask you, you know, are you keeping busy? And you were to say, actually, not so much. No, I'm not really into busy, you know. I'm actually, it's like, whoa, you know. I think we better send you to the school therapist, you know, because that we have to prove, we have to earn, the last one here, it's not okay unless I've earned it. Again, this seems so sensible, but friends, it is a story. And the question I think I have to ask is, what's the connection between the story and what we're now doing, the abuse that we now visit upon planet Earth? We've inherited the story. We have consciousness. It's our most precious gift that can bring us to awareness around that story. And we can just ask simple questions. Is this it? In my belly brain? So not knowing why we're here. The students I talk with at Penn State regularly, this just, yeah, you know, I'm never enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not funny enough. I'm just not enough. Now, human cultures, you know, that's not a given for human beings. That's a culturally created construct. that I have to compete, have to prove myself. I'm never enough. I love this quote from John Wellwood. He says, all the most intractable problems in human relationships can be traced back to the mood of unlove, what he calls the mood of unlove. He defines it as a deep-seated suspicion most of us harbor within ourselves that we cannot be loved or that we are not truly lovable just for who we are. We have to earn it somehow. This basic insecurity means it's hard to trust in ourselves, in other people, or in life itself. The mood of it's the mood of unlove that leads to those judgments. Not enough. Got to improve. Got to be better. Got to prove myself. But imagine, that I'm here. I've been born out of this earth. Here I am. I have a right to exist. I don't have to prove it. I am it. The Native Americans have a story around this. It's quite beautiful. I don't know which tradition it comes from, but the Great Spirit invites examples of all the different creatures on earth into a large gathering. So there's the beaver, and there's the bird, and on and on. And the Great Spirit simply asks one representative of each one to explain why they're here. What's your purpose in life? And they all know. Earthworm knows, beetle knows, bluebird knows. They know why they're here. They're not looking around at each other comparing themselves. Well, let's see, I'm not good enough. And finally, the Great Spirit says, and you, because the last one left is the human, why are you here? What's your purpose? And the human, I don't know. And the others are astounded. You don't know. You don't know. You're here. You've been given the gift of consciousness to simply delight, to celebrate, to be filled with gratitude for all that is. Your job is simply to be aware. It's not to get ahead. It's to be conscious. It's to open your heart. It's to love. You were designed, look at your design, human being, You're not down on all fours. You're not covered with thick fur or a hide. You stand upright. And your whole center is exposed. You're here to receive, to see, to feel. That's why you're here. You're good enough. You have a right to exist. So let me give you a recap, friends. I'm suggesting that the abuse that we've been visiting upon planet Earth is the result of separation in these three realms. From our feelings, from our full intelligence, and from this fundamental question of meaning and purpose. That we're separate in these ways, to varying degrees. I know that I am, as much as I have trouble admitting it. So the upshot I'm suggesting is that the degree to which we're separate from ourselves creates a separation from Earth. And let me unpack that for a second. Each of us literally is Earth. We sometimes say, well, we're born into the world. You were not born into the world. You were born out of the world. All of us came out of the world. Every element in our body came from this planet. We're basically water and mineral that's animated by the life force. We all have been born out of this planet. So if you say something like Mother Earth and people say, oh, you hippie. It's like, are you kidding me? Earth is our mother, friends. It's where we came from. It's where we return in the great cycle of life. I mean, you, my friend, you are Earth sitting. That doesn't mean you're sitting for Earth like a babysitter. You literally are the Earth, And you are, and you are. We all are. I'm Earth standing. It's who we are. This is our fundamental identity. The fact that we don't get that, the fact that we're not in right relationship with our bodies leads us to create a world that is disharmonious with our larger body. Earth really is our larger body. So if there's anything that I would love to see you perhaps hold on to, is this very simple formulation. Separation tells us that we're apart from Earth. Here I am, I'm inside, I live an indoor life. Earth out there is just a warehouse. I go to it when I need to, but I am fundamentally apart from Earth. But the ecological truth is that we are a part of. And unless we begin to understand that, then this harmony will continue. It just can't help but, until we can connect in this deep way, using our full bodies. And it begins with connecting with our bodies. It begins with standing naked before a mirror, no one around, and looking at our bodies as the beloved, looking at that weird freckle, right? What our culture tells us is a thigh that's a little bit too big, or an arm that's a little bit too skinny. Looking at that droopy, looking at the whole of it, and seeing these as just the marks of our own individuality, and really seeing ourselves as the beloved. When we do that, we will see, obviously, our larger body as the beloved, and we would never abuse it. As a scientist at Penn State, when I use the L word, talk about love, we are enfleshed beings. Love is who we are, it's why we're here. Science is easy compared to love. Anybody can do science. Love is the perennial challenge. So imagine this, and I'll finish with this as a visualization. Imagine that your relationship with Earth was the same as your relationship with your beloved. If you loved her like that, you'd want to be near her physically. You would want to take off your shoes and walk barefoot. You'd want to know everything about her, her story, her moods, what she looks like by moonlight. You would rejoice. The solstice, the equinox, you would know what it means to rejoice. My gosh, the sun has come back. You would make her needs your own needs, because they are, obviously. You would fear her loss and grieve for her injuries. You would weep. You would mourn. That's what we do for the beloved. And you would protect her. You'd be helpless to do otherwise. You wouldn't think, well, maybe they'll figure it out. So I leave you with this, friends, that it all comes down, in my experience, to our capacity to open our hearts, drop down into our bodies. And sometimes, and I ask you to do this with me if you would, just as an experiment. I'll do it first. But when I'm lost, I don't know what to do. My practice is simply to knock twice on my heart and open. I leave my head, I drop down into my core, and I knock twice and open. What should I do about climate change? You're not going to know up here. It's the integration, the compassion, the harmony with the head element. And that comes together right here in our hearts. So just do that with me for a minute. Just knock twice and open. Knock twice and open. Whatever the question, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. My gosh. Don't do to-list pros and cons, Knock twice and open, and then trust. Trust in yourself, trust in each other, trust in the goodness of this earth. Thank you.